Welcome to Explosive Enterprises. My name is Foolish, the resident vibes guy. My role in the team has been filling in the gaps where the other guys need help, whether it's opinions on script writing, designing the team's merchandise, or taking squad lead in our milsim outings. I'm an electric gun user primarily, but all of Catgut's gas blowback videos have had me curious about trying out some gas blowbacks. In fact, I've been waiting for a good opportunity to make my debut for the channel when we were offered an opportunity to review the Double Eagle Noveske MWS clone, and since Time Bomb was busy lighting matches somewhere and the gun is a replica of something about 30 years too new for Catgut to really care, it was my time to shine. For those of you looking for some real detail in our review of this clone, Catgut will be back for the technical breakdown of the replica later on. Before we get started on the video, we want to thank our sponsor for today, Dynatec Industries. Dynatec Industries is a US-based gas blowback retailer looking to make gas blowback airsoft more approachable for the US market. Their carefully curated selection of gas blowback replicas, upgrade parts, magazines, and other accessories are all backed by staff that know what they're talking about. We like what they're doing and are excited to see more from them. They were kind enough to provide the replica and magazines for this video, but to be clear, our review is not influenced by our partnership with them. In fact, they're looking to us to give them the final word on whether or not this gun is still worth keeping in stock. Before I get into the impressions of the gun and gas blowback in general, a little history. In the late 2000s and 2010s, DevGru, formerly known as SEAL Team 6, was almost famous for its use of the HK416, a rugged, albeit sometimes unwieldy, piston-driven AR platform. While the 416 did undergo improvements to dial in the weight and rail system, with the advent of SOCOM's URGI program, it was clear by the end of the 2010s that DevGru's primary weapon was in need of a real update. Initially spotted in 2021 during exercises off the Virginia coast, the Noveske Navy contract build was this update. Composed of a Noveske Gen 3 billeted upper receiver with a 10.5-inch chrome-lined barrel, Geisley Super Duty charging handle, and a mil-spec bolt carrier group all slapped on top of a Noveske forged lower receiver with ambidextrous bolt catch and mag pull furniture, the Noveske Navy contract build is the love child of modern warfighter demands, internet hype culture, and blank Navy checks. Now the real question is, does any of that style translate to airsoft? In a word, maybe. It depends what you're looking for out of a replica. I was initially quite impressed with the external build quality of the Double Eagle out of the box. The metal of the receiver and NSR rail feels authentic and solidly put together, and the finish, while obviously not Cerakote like the real thing, looks the part. The only thing I was disappointed with was the crane stock the replica came with. Poor fitment on the buffer tube resulted in a ton of wobble in every position and gave the replica a cheap feeling when shouldered. I was quick to replace it with a real mil-spec Magpul SL stock, which immediately improved the feel of the whole gun. Overall, while I'm sure Catgut will have more to say on this matter once the gun is given to him for technical review, the externals of the gun get a thumbs up from me. Operation of an AR platform is hopefully nothing new to anyone watching our videos, and with Double Eagle it's as straightforward as ever. Obviously quite a jump up for me from AEGs, but some living room practice had me ready to go. I took the Noveske out for a skirmish day at my local field, and despite testing the gun at home and having been loaned gas blowback guns from Catgut before, I found myself woefully underprepared for the nuance of running an MWS clone out of the box on a field. When the gun shot, it shot well, but it was getting it to shoot that posed the problem. I will say this. Using a gas blowback gun is an experience like no other. While ripping off dozens of rounds out of a stock AEG is always good fun, flicking off your safety before delivering a chunky double tap out of a gas blowback is a thrill all its own. I was torn. I wanted to love the gun, but it was clear I was in over my head.
So before we do this handoff though, I figured this would be a good opportunity to get your perspective as someone new to gas blowback rifles and just kind of talk about what are the things that you ran into both with this gun specifically and also with gas rifles as a whole. So let's start with the big picture, just right off the bat. What would you say, how hard was the learning curve adjusting from AEGs, which you've been using for a very long time, to a gas rifle?
Yeah, so I'd used gas blowback guns 2 times previously. Gun Gamers events, I would run squad lead for XE. Those were a bit different because squad leading, I'm mostly just shouting orders. I didn't really shoot that much. I probably used a magazine total at both those events. So using them at a skirmish, gas blowback was a lot different first time around. The prep in the ready room is a lot different, right? Making sure every magazine is gassed. I went to go to the range, and I walked outside, having forgot to gas the mags up that morning. Yeah, I mean, the other thing, right, was just, making sure I packed gas, packed BBs, and I probably already mentioned this. I was only supplied with 4 magazines for this test, right? And I was only really feeling that 2 were reliable. Okay. So I had to make sure I was ready to reload quickly in the middle of rounds, right?
Yeah, 2 magazines. That's tough.
Yes, 2 mags was tough.
Okay, so did anything really surprise you about this?
The gun in general?
Yeah, about just using gas blowback.
Yeah, so actually yes. The thing I've always complained about with gas blowbacks as a stupid airsofter who never actually used one, was magazine capacity, right? Yeah. So I always said, oh, well, I'm 31 years old and I've been playing since I was 15. So I've been using AEGs for 16 years, most of my life. And when I shoot at someone, I usually am ripping off 3 to 4 shots. Like instinct, I see someone, 3 shots are coming out of the barrel. Always, right? Doesn't matter if I hit them on the first one, it's always happening.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I was worried, okay, what the hell? I'm going to have, in this case, 60 usable rounds. But even if I had a full combat load, it's about as much as a mid-cap, right? I have 130 round PTS mid-caps for my AEG. So I thought to myself, oh, well, shoot, the ammo capacity is going to be awful. And it wasn't. I got used to it immediately. Literally immediately. I think the first round, I fired my first double tap, and I was like, that's fine. Right, you adjust to it instantly.
You mentioned because you had 2 mags that you had to really think about how you were going to carry BBs and gas on the field.
Right. So I mean, at our skirmish field, it's a small area, and you'll see that in the footage. So luckily, I was always able to just dive back to respawn, and just get back up. But I'm gonna be honest, I did that a lot more than I thought I was going to.
Okay.
Yeah, I would usually make a mag last about 3/4 of a round, if not that. I mean, if I see someone, I'm usually taking a shot and then taking a follow shot if I need to. I wasn't ripping off 3-4 rounds.
Yeah.
This kind of happened instinctually, and I was very surprised. I said it to Time Bomb and Bushwookie in the ready room during lunch. I said, oh man, the mag capacity was the last thing I was worried about, believe it or not. So you can count yourself right on that.
So, actually, maybe we could just talk about really quickly. What did you use to carry? Did you just leave them at your staging area?
The gas and the BBs.
Your gas and BBs.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had to bring a backpack with me always.
Okay.
When I go to at a respawn area, but yeah, no, they weren't on my person.
So I'm going to assert that if you had just 2 mags on you and you were able to make that work for a skirmish without even having gas and BBs on your person, if you had 5 or 6 mags, probably would have been pretty.
No,
easy.
Correct. I will go on a tangent here.
Okay.
The thing about the gas gun isn't the ammo capacity. It's the unreliability when you're not prepared for it.
Okay.
Okay. My confidence wasn't in the amount of BBs that I had on me. It was whether or not the damn gun was going to shoot. I'm serious, right? I'm sitting there okay, this is my first time using it. I'm not used to the finicky parts of it. This is an out-of-the-box clone. So I'm thinking to myself, it happened several times, and unfortunately I didn't get them all on video, where I would have a guy dead to rights and the gun would just fail.
Okay.
Right? I have the ammo, but the gun doesn't go off. It vents gas. It, clicks for whatever reason, not due to my manual of arms, but rather, just you experienced it and you'll talk about it, I'm sure. But
we could talk about that now.
Yes.
We had the gun out for all of 30 seconds, and I went to go shoot off a couple of mags and immediately ran into 4 or 5 different malfunctions in a row. And my money is at least partially on those G&G bios that you were using.
Yeah, don't use G&G bios.
I've had bad experiences with those in the past, and as soon as we loaded up with those Elite Force or the BLS BBs that I have, those ran just fine. Even though BLS, they do have some issues that I want to talk about in a future video. But and you mentioned that you've been using those G&G BIOS in your AEGs.
In my AEGs for
years
the
and
past
years and
year.
years.
Yeah.
But this is much higher stress, much more sensitive.
Right. So that was the thing for me, right? It's not the ammo count. It's not anything like that people always say, the cooldown. No, that's not the thing. It's the, you can't just plug and play these like you can in AEG, unfortunately. I know these days, a lot of guns aren't coming with batteries anymore like they did when I was growing up.
Sure.
But the process of buy a battery, buy a gun is pretty simple for most people, and this is a whole different monster, unfortunately, right?
And I remember, do I correctly remember that you had an issue with a fill adapter?
Yes. Oh my gosh, I bent Time Bomb's fill adapter, and it wasn't because of the offset either. It was literally just me sitting there talking to someone, and I just right? It was just bent when it came out. I didn't force it in any which way, but these have a very deep channel, I think, and they're at a kind of an interesting angle. So Time Bomb told me it was an Amazon adapter, right? So it just
had a lot of problems with those.
Bent the hell out of it. But it's little crap like that, right?
Yeah. But I bring that up just because, even if the gun were perfect and the magazines were all perfect, you could screw yourself over just by having the wrong BBs and the wrong fill adapter.
Because you just not know. Right. I mean, I know we all like to say, you have to be using this BB, but with AEGs, some of that stuff hasn't always been ringing true for me over the years. Right. You
won't die immediately if you use a trickle charger with your battery.
Correct.
You shouldn't do it, but it won't kill you.
But with something like a gas blowback, it's kind of a whole responsibility, right, to get in the field and get playing. That said, when the gun worked, what the hell? It's a gun, right?
Yeah.
It shoots BBs and I get people out. It's not a big deal. But yeah, it's the setup. Whole different thing for me. Right. Yeah.
How was the performance, like, once you were able to actually sling BBs?
So let's say from an airsofter's perspective, right? I'm the kind of guy that I don't get super picky about it, but I did say almost immediately off the cuff I need a new hop-up.
I'll certainly be doing some testing.
You will be. I'm sure you'll come to the same conclusion. I shot at the range because I want to dial in the Holosun.
Okay.
And yeah, it won't group well, and the hop itself, it doesn't carry it very well.
What weight were you using?
0.3s.
Okay.
I watched your video, don't worry. You can keep that in. I've watched your video, don't worry. That was, I think, my first impression of the hop. Again, I was able to engage people at normal ranges, and it wasn't debilitating, but it just adds to that list of little things.
And what I'm leading to, as you can probably imagine, is that these things do add up. If you don't have a lot of ammo to work with, and also you can't make it connect...
Right, so you've infamously, me and some of the other XE members quote this, you've infamously said in one of your videos that you liked being able to aim at like enemy hands with a properly tuned GBB, right? No, not happening.
Okay.
With this, right? This is still very much entry-level accuracy out of the box, right?
Sure.
So take that for what you will.
Okay.
Yeah.
But from what I heard through the grapevine, that was not the only issue you had. There was something about magazines. Can you tell me a bit about that?
Yes. So the gun came with this Double Eagle D-Mag. It's a mimic of a Magpul P-Mag windowed Gen 3. This thing... How do I put this? It's a piece of crap. Out of the box, fired off maybe 15 rounds before it would no longer hold gas.
Interesting.
Yeah, and even then, those 15 rounds were the worst performing on a full charge out of all the other magazines I tested. It was just, it's a paperweight.
So it wasn't even a feed issue, it was a gas issue?
Oh no, it shot.
Okay.
It shot until, it wouldn't hold gas. It's just, it's a hunk of junk, in my professional opinion. I think this MSRP is for $380. The gun that comes with the mag has to work. No.
Right.
Everyone on e-bike, everyone says, stay away from it.
Yeah.
Okay, so unfortunately, that's what I have to say about that. Now, this is the DE Stanag. These are the ones I had the most success with. The TM Stanag, I could not get to work consistently. It would shoot off a couple rounds for me and then vent all the gas out of the bolt. These DE Stanags, as in Double Eagle, the company, same company as the gun, were my best luck. These were the closest thing I had to plug and play using this as a novice. I had a couple issues with just dead gun. I had to reseat the magazine. I also had some issues with gas capacity.
Okay.
Sometimes they wouldn't quite fill to a full mag load. Quick segue. I think that might have been the gun theoretically working perfectly. Might have been my biggest worry was gas capacity. I'm used to your VFC mags.
That's true.
Having however many full loads.
A lot.
In a gas fill, right?
Yep.
And from what I experienced, I was getting 1.3.
Okay.
Yeah.
That doesn't really
50 rounds.
Surprise me. Yeah, if you do the little tricks for filling, if you had a better fill adapter or one that seals a little better, you might be able to get 2 mags out.
Yeah.
But that's 50 to 80 shots. That's pretty normal from my understanding. I could be totally off here and misremembering. I'll certainly be doing my research before getting into the content. But yeah, I mean, and that kind of ties back to if you're going to use this kind of system, you really do need to have either gas in the staging area or gas on your person for bigger games. So we talked about accuracy, we talked about gas efficiency. What about just the experience of actually shooting compared to the AGs you're used to?
Yeah, so obviously it's a step up from AGs. You can't beat the instant trigger response, right? There's absolutely nothing going on except gas and BB when you pull the trigger, right? And of course, can't ignore the recoil. Now, in previous games, as I mentioned, played with Hypertech and VFCs. The recoil on this was not weak or disappointing, but different, right? Spongy is the exact word, yes. The recoil spring is just clearly not as powerful as it could be.
I think it's a recoil spring. I think there's also something funny with the buffer being spring-loaded. I'm going to look into that because I think that's part of how it accomplishes that really high rate of fire.
That, I think my laundry list to continue to use the gun is just mag, hop-up, recoil.
That is fixable, I believe. There are aftermarket parts that can address
those 3 things, and my review of this jumps up
Okay, sure.
Right?
So just all the important things about it.
Yes. Yeah, I really want to like it. I really do.
Okay.
I really do. I had fun using it, and I will continue to have fun using it.
It's not there yet.
It's not there yet. Yeah.
But
and
you can see the promise.
I can see the promise. That's kind of the thing with these gas guns, though. You've almost summed it up in one sentence right there, right? There's stuff that needs to get done, right?
Okay.
I'm not going to plug any particular brand here, but there are other AEG brands where I pick it up and I take it out of the box and it's good, right?
Yeah.
Mag in, I'm putting a scope on it and we're rocking and rolling. And I love the damn thing, right?
Yep.
But it just seems like in my experience with this and watching the channel's videos and knowing kind of what you go through to make this happen, right? That's not the gas blowback experience. It's just not.
Yeah, there are a few on the market now that are just pick up and play, but they are few and far between.
Sure. Maybe we'll cover them on the channel. Who knows?
We already have. Maybe we'll have more.
Maybe you'll go watch the video and you'll anyway. You want to talk about my fun setup?
Yeah, let's talk about your fun setup.
Yes. So on this gun, I have a couple things. Okay. Out of the box, this the Noveske N4 comes with this crane stock, sort of in the same FDE color as the rest of the weapon. My opinion on this is that it's a clone of a crane stock, and it's not a good one at that. So this went off almost immediately.
Is it wobbly?
It's very wobbly.
Okay.
Very wobbly. I replaced it with this genuine Magpul. I believe this is the SLK or SL. This is the SL. Yep. Stock. This is a mil-spec one, and it does fit on the tube, albeit rather tightly. But that immediately improved the feel of the gun, I would say, by 50%. That wobbly stock throws the whole experience off. So right off the bat. From there, I kind of wanted to mimic a setup I saw on one of these on some, cool Navy SEAL pictures. So I got this OMM mount. It's kind of like a Hydra, but a little more reasonable. Everyone's probably familiar with the Hydra at this point. Do you know what the point of a Hydra or an OMM mount?
Yeah, so it's first off, it's so that you mount all your stuff to the receiver, so that you don't have to worry about your rail holding zero. You can use a cool carbon fiber, free float, whatever, if you want.
Yep.
If you want, you can put other things up there, but you don't have to worry about holding zero. And it also elevates it to get out of the way when you thumb over bore, because you can't shoot a rifle unless you thumb over bore it. So you got to raise this up a little bit so it can actually work.
Essentially, yeah. So mounts everything to the receiver. The other thing is that everything mounted to the receiver gives it more center of gravity towards the rear.
It doesn't put it up at front.
Shockingly makes the gun much more easy to handle than you might imagine.
Yeah.
I used to be laser box in the front, put my thumb on top of it kind of guy. As soon as I started using this, I kind of have started to see the light a little bit.
Okay.
I've always been naturally inclined to hold my rifles like this. Right?
It works.
With my thumb forward. Not necessarily this hardcore C-clamp, but with my thumb forward like this.
I make fun, but it works. And you can put your switch up there.
Exactly. With a short gun like this, you run out of rail space really quick. And with that box up there, even with this little end gal, it's a little uncomfortable. Having the laser box and everything kind of pulled to the rear here, it just centers the whole gun. The other fun thing is the raised optic. Now, this is not quite as high as the Hydra.
Yes, this is about 2.5 inches.
The Hydra being 2.9.
Yep.
Very similar in height to everyone's favorite retro setup.
Carry handle height, but you don't have to have a carry handle, so you don't have to rely on this stupid screw to hold your zero. You can mount your other devices.
And it also looks modern.
Yeah, well, actually, what I was also going to say is just that you're kind of arriving at the same reason why I like these retro rifles so much for Airsoft. This is not an Airsoft rifle, but just you got nothing up front. It stays lightweight. It stays clean. I will thumb over bore this because I'm nothing if not a hypocrite. But strap a light to this. Everything you need, nothing you don't.
Right. Exactly.
I like the way that balances.
Correct. So, I love the tactical, whatever you want to call it, range ninja, ultra modern look of stuff, but I also don't like unpractical guns.
Sure.
Right?
And you have a very practical optic on there.
Correct. This is the HoloSun. This is the HS503GU. It alternates between circle dot, kind of like a Neotech, or just point dot. I have it just set to the single dot right now. I love this optic because it's shake awake.
Yeah.
Saves battery. I pick it up and it's ready to go, and it's durable as all hell.
Battery will last forever.
Lasts forever. I think this is the same battery I put in it back pre-COVID, and it's still rocking and rolling.
You might still consider a lens protector.
Yeah,
the
that's
glass
coming.
Could die.
That's coming for sure. But I mean, it's everything I need, nothing I don't. Right? I have my flashlight. I have a dual button coming from Time Bomb. He's modifying it because it needs to reach all the way back around to this end gal way back here. But besides that, I mean, nothing I don't need. Also for testing, and I didn't really mention this yet, I do have a bad lever on here. Now, I have a mixed opinion on this. This is the first time I'm actually using one. I used to mount it on my AEGs just for cool points, okay? So, it's the first time using it. Yeah. Reloads are much faster with this. That said, God almighty, does it fuck up a natural trigger finger movement, okay?
Yeah.
Right? I'm, as anyone is, naturally inclined to put my trigger finger about here, and trying to quickly slip it in to engage someone is kind of a nightmare with this little nub here.
Well,
right?
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say that it's as big an issue as it's been sometimes made out to be, but that's also how people ND with it when they go to slip their finger in there.
Yeah.
Whoopsie.
Yeah. So I'm still testing that, and I know you're gonna play around with the gun in my setup.
Yeah.
But it might come off, might not.
I will say the thing that I've always noticed that I found to be the most annoying with the bad lever is when you do have it locked open. If it locks open. So you lock open and you go to move to get to cover and you get your finger off the trigger and then you just accidentally bump the lever.
And now you don't know you're out of ammo. Yeah.
Well, you're out of ammo, but now you need to re-rack in order to, once you reload, which you should not have to do with an AR in normal operation.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, the whole intention with the setup was to kind of try something new. I've never tried one of these before. These, I don't know what you want to call them, Hydra-like mounts.
Yeah, sure. It's a repro, right?
This is a repro.
You're not paying however much the...
I'm sorry to whatever company makes the OMM mount. That's how important you are to me. But I did go with a repro for the low price of $40 instead of $400. It is what it is.
It is.
Yeah. So
for Airsoft, it works great.
For Airsoft, it's perfect. I love this setup, and I'm looking forward to continuing to use it. I think what's coming up next for this, once you're done testing, is a new stock. I'm going to get the slimmer SLK with a cheek riser.
Okay.
And then maybe a magwell extender.
Okay.
And then that's pretty much going to be it. I do have some extra rail space here for a magnifier. Probably only for field games, though. But besides that, I mean, it's kind of ready to rock.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing what you think of it when you do your testing. Here
I'll
you go.
certainly be doing plenty of that.
And that's that on that. What do you think?
I think I can't get it to lock open. That's so weird.
We did have the notes sitting here for all of that.
Oh, that's fine. Who cares?
Okay. All right, good.
So let's jump into our usual breakdown. Starting with externals, at the muzzle, normally the DE comes with a 3-prong flash hider, but on this one it's been replaced with a replica Surefire muzzle brake. Good thing it's just Airsoft, because shooting a 10-inch 5.56 with one of these at an indoor range is a great way to lose friends. In any case, the threading is standard 14mm negative. The barrel is supposed to look like stainless steel, but I will nitpick that this matte white is an obvious aluminum finish. It's mostly concealed by the handguard in any case, which has the same painted tan finish as all the other metal parts. It's a thick paint finish that looks fine, but it scratches like paint, so nothing to write home about. The receivers are, well, they're AR receivers, though the upper is a different profile from a standard mil-spec forging. On the right side, we can see the bolt carrier, which is just a flat black pot metal finish. If you're familiar with real ARs, you might think that this carrier is slightly out of battery, because you can just see a gap in front of it, but no, that's just how the MWS is. And there's a forward assist, and it is functional, though not actually real spec, as it uses a big flat arm rather than a small steel pawl. Either way, cool to have, but as always, you really shouldn't ever need to use it. I want to note that earlier DE N4s had silver bolt carriers and were allegedly less compatible with Tokyo Marui magazines. We'll get to why I said allegedly later. The charging handle looks like a Noveske super badass charging handle. Really? John Noveske dies and you hire Randy Pitchford to do your branding? Well, it's even marked like a real one, but then has that little almost embarrassed for Airsoft only addendum. That's because this is not real spec and it isn't AEG spec either, so it is only compatible with MWS specific charging handles. The lower has proper Noveske markings, but curiously no serial number. The pistol grip is an off-brand Magpul K2, though it lacks the grip storage compartment. Real pistol grips will fit without modification, real trigger guards will fit in lieu of this curved one, but may require minor fitment. Interestingly, for a MWS clone, the fire selector, mag catch, trigger, and bolt release are all steel. The dust cover and mag release button are not, however, and are a fake-looking gray that doesn't look much like the anodizing or phosphating of the real counterparts. The stock is a crane type with frankly awful fitment, as Foolish mentioned. While this gun is not compatible with real buffer tubes, the external dimensions of the tube are mil-spec, so a real stock is drop-in and fits much better. Oh, and it came with some very cheap plastic backup sights, but we've already lost the mounting hardware for the rear sight, hence why they're not on the gun. Not a lot to say here, we'd recommend a red dot rather than any sort of irons for this type of gun anyways. Lastly, the magazines. The DE Mag both performs like crap, which we'll get to, and looks equally poor with very fake mock casings and spring guide visible through the side. The DE Stanags, on the other hand, are almost identical to their Tokyo Marui counterparts, and an improvement over the Mag in every way. All three of these mags weigh about 430 grams empty, with the Mag being a bit lighter and the actual TM a bit heavier, but it's not at all noticeable in practice. Overall, these are surprisingly okay externals for a budget clone, so let's get into the internals. The hop is contained in the barrel, but the adjustment system is in the receiver. So first, the rail comes off with 6 screws. The gas block secures with 2, then slides forward. Now the barrel nut can come off with an armorer's wrench, or by hand if you somehow failed to fully tighten it last time, and then the entire barrel assembly comes out. The inner barrel and chamber are free and pull out the back. The hop unit is a clamshell held together by an O-ring, and I've already replaced the bucking and nub with 4UAD or quad equivalents, as the stock silicone nub and Marui style bucking do not handle heavyweight BBs. While the overall design of this hop unit is fine, and it does perform well when tuned properly, there's a lot of slop and fitment that requires careful alignment of the barrel to the chamber and the nub within its slot. Misalignment can cause pretty severe left or right hooks, so this unit might be worth replacing with something a bit tighter if that proves to be an issue, but we've been able to get it to work fine by just checking that the contact patch isn't visibly off-center. The adjustment mechanism is still in the receiver, and it is removed by loosening a securing screw previously hidden by the gas tube. This allows the unit to slide out the back, being very careful not to lose the detent pin and spring. I like this adjustment system, as the tactile clicks give positive feedback but are small enough for fine-tuning, though I do find this difficult to access through the ejection port, so I have to open up the gun to adjust. On reassembly, just be sure to get the adjuster hook underneath the tensioner arm or the hop just won't work. One other interesting detail here is this peg on the back. This is where the bulk carrier's mock gas key strikes as it comes forwards, and it's buffered by an O-ring to soften the impact. Speaking of, while the bulk carrier looks at first glance a lot like the bulk carrier on a Western Arms derivative or real AR, the mock locking lugs are spring-loaded to avoid needing an accommodation for them on the chamber. The mock gas key is also spring-loaded, and that's because it serves as the nozzle stop, getting pulled forwards against a spring when the nozzle hits full extension. It also has an integral roller to smooth out contact with the hammer. Overall, it weighs 215 grams, which is only a bit less than a VFC or GHK. It's pot metal, but it does have a steel insert for the bolt catch system, which we'll get to. To disassemble, I just remove the 2 screws on top, slide the gas key section forwards and off, and then pry up the retaining plate for the nozzle return spring plug, and the nozzle comes out the front. This is actually a unicorn nozzle installed, so let's switch to the original double eagle. Okay, so obviously this doesn't use an O-ring to seal, but rather a piston cup. I've been wary of this design in the past for a couple of reasons, but this one is a close fit to the carrier, so it will still seal at low pressure, while it's also short enough and stiff enough that it cannot fold back on itself during retraction like KWAs tend to. Alright, fine. The rocket valve and return spring come out by removing 1 screw, and here's where things get funny. This rocket valve is a typical TM style design, and note that we added the grub screw for power adjustment as it did 1.7 joules out of the box. The thing is, this rocket valve is not MWS spec, and adjustable valves intended for the TM will not fit. The TM nozzle is slightly asymmetrical to the sides and uses this to index the rocket valve, while the DE is symmetrical, so your options for reducing power are to DIY it like this, glue in tubing like we've shown in prior videos to reduce throughput, or replace the entire nozzle with a TM spec one. We don't currently recommend this unicorn nozzle though, as we ran into some bizarre overchambering issues that we have yet to conclusively resolve. We instead recommend a Guns Modify version 3.5 nozzle plus Federal Concepts valve for adjustment. 2 last notes on reassembly. First, be sure to verify that the nozzle return spring plug O-ring is present either in the carrier or on the plug itself. At room temperature, you might not immediately notice if it's missing, but it will reduce efficiency and the effect will be more pronounced the colder it is. Second, the best way we found to get this gas key spring back in is to have it protrude out the back, then carefully pull it forwards with a small flathead screwdriver. Kind of a pain, but that's the only fiddly part of working on this nozzle, and maybe there's a trick to it we missed. As mentioned, the charging handle is not mil-spec, being significantly shorter than a real one. It also lacks the indexing lugs on the side, so note that there's nothing keeping it in the upper when the carrier is removed. Moving into the lower, the buffer is a spring-loaded plastic assembly that weighs a mere 28 grams, so while the carrier is almost as heavy as a VFC or GHK, the lack of buffer weight results in significantly reduced reciprocating mass. This buffer is spring-loaded, which helps to increase cyclic rate with the fairly weak recoil spring, but does give the recoil a spongy feel we'll discuss later. Note that when closing the receivers, the upper depresses the oversized buffer retaining pin to get it out of the way of the carrier, so if the carrier isn't actually installed, this will lock the buffer inside the upper and is kind of a pain to resolve. If you take the carrier out to adjust the hop up or power, just be sure to leave the receivers broken open. Now the fire control group, and this is where the term ZET system comes from. To remove the trigger box, I just remove the magazine catch, knock out the trigger pin left to right, remove a screw from the rear, and turn the selector while pulling it. So ZET refers to the ZET plate on the right side and is an acronym standing for... I have no idea, actually. What matters is that this is a steel plate for stop on empty, and its hook shape ensures positive engagement with a similarly shaped steel insert in the carrier. Furthermore, this is spring-loaded, so it decelerates the carrier over a short distance rather than bring it to a sudden stop, which dramatically reduces wear and tear. I'm not going to disassemble the entire fire control group because that's pretty well documented already, and given the lack of wear we've observed, most users should never need to. What's important here is the fact that this trigger pack, much like the rest of the gun, is designed around the constraints of airsoft and pot metal rather than trying to replicate the design of a real AR in inferior materials. For instance, the hammer has a built-in roller to further reduce friction against the carrier, while the auto sear is a widened and very chunky design. There is wear here because it's a pot metal gun, like peening visible on the carrier where it hits the roller, but it isn't on any critical surfaces that need to maintain their shape to function. Combined with all the buffered and spring-loaded elements already discussed, and what you get is a gun that is fairly low stress internally, despite performing all the same functions as any other gas blowback rifle. This sort of clever engineering is the reason a pot metal MWS or this Double Eagle clone can be reliable guns, while cheap clones of the Western Arms system, like those Golden Eagle ARs, are not. You can have realism, you can have cheap materials, and you can have reliability, but you cannot have all three, and this design opts for the latter two. While it's not 100% TM spec as mentioned, overall this gun is still a lot closer to the original TM than some of the other MWS clones, such as the CYMA CGS system, which inexplicably deviates from the ZET plate design to its detriment. Onto the magazines, and the DE Stannags are fairly easy to disassemble. On the underside, removing two screws frees the base plate and feed spring, though note that the follower will tend to stay in the feed track and needs to be pushed out the bottom. That's because it has a spring-loaded arm for engaging the stop on empty system, which ensures reliable stop on empty, but also causes that drag. Now you may notice that the fill valve is surrounded by something else, so let's take those out. The fill valve is a typical Marui elongated design and is a two-way fill valve, but the outer body is just a hollow tube running about 2/3 the length of the magazine. This tube is designed to limit how much liquid propellant goes into the magazine before it starts spitting gas out the top, and note that we've already cut it significantly shorter than stock. On most TMs, the way the two-way fill valve works is it allows gas to escape while liquid fills the mag, and when it starts spewing liquid it's full, and that guarantees a complete fill with no fuss and no risk of overfilling. MWS mags are much more finicky. They're picky about the fill adapter and require filling vertically, then tilting once it starts to spray in order to get a complete fill of about 16 grams. For the sake of experimentation, we cut this tube shorter and eventually found that just taking off about an inch was sufficient to reliably reach proper capacity without any contortions, but now it is possible to overfill, so this might not be the best idea if you use full auto. Now you might wonder, why does getting a complete fill matter? I mean, as long as you can clear a mag, who cares? Well, the amount of gas in the mag directly impacts cooldown. The less thermal mass in the gas, the quicker it cools down, which means more of a FPS drop per shot, and in cold weather, fewer shots before it stops fully cycling. Getting a complete fill improves performance in several ways, so it is worth pursuing, and all of our performance testing will be done with a full 16 gram fill. And for what it's worth, if you don't want to deal with the fussy fill angles, but also don't want to cut the tubes, you can get a pack of dental ligature ties for a few bucks, and then just pop one on the valve to turn it into a conventional silent fill valve. And that's it for the bottom of the mag, so let's look at the top. Knocking out two cross pins frees the top lock, sealed by a rectangular gasket. On this top block, popping out another cross pin releases the transfer bar, and behind it is the actual valve. This is an unremarkable gas release valve, so that's it for the mags. Oh, except for the feed lips. Here's a DE Stannag from the front, and here's a TM Stannag. Notice the difference? On the TM, it seems like the BB has to drop a bit lower before it can exit the feed lips, and takes a little more force. We found that in the stock Double Eagle rifle, this makes feeding unreliable, often resulting in hard jams that cause all the gas to vent from the magazine, plus we've heard of this breaking the nozzles as well. And again, this is on the second version of the DE-N4, which was supposed to have fixed mag compatibility. The first actual fix is to shim the mag well to hold the mag rigidly aligned, which is annoying, prevents the mags from dropping free, and makes other brands not fit easily. The second fix is to just switch to a TM spec nozzle, which you might want to do anyways for adjustable valve compatibility. As for loading, the feed lip geometry on the DE mags makes them play a little nicer with electric speed loaders than the TM mags. They still require some sort of loading adapter and don't load as easily as VFCs, but this is doable in the field. I haven't opened up the DEP mag on camera, and I'm not going to. It's a little different in design, but it holds less gas, doesn't feed as well, has a plastic shell to insulate, so cooldown is worse. It sucks. Don't bother with the DEP mag, it's strictly worse in every way. If you really need PMAG styling, Guns Modify mags exist. For Stanags, the DE and TM mags are functionally equivalent aside from that feed issue, so we suggest sticking with DE just because they're a bit cheaper. So on to controls and operation, and well, it's an AR. What's interesting here is that the roller on the carrier makes for a very smooth charging cycle, and the positive engagement on the bolt catch requires a deliberate effort to overcome. The selector also clicks nicely between positions, so while the gun internally is nothing like a real AR, the feel of the controls is pretty good. The trigger, though, is a little underwhelming. It has a very short take-up of about a pound, then a 4-pound indistinct break with a fair bit of overtravel. Reset isn't particularly tactile, so rapid-firing this involves slapping the trigger, fully resetting each time. For anyone coming from an AEG, this trigger will seem amazing, but compared to a VFC or GHK, it falls well short. And lastly, we'll show hop adjustment. After breaking the gun open, pulling the wheel back increases backspin, while pushing forwards reduces hop. On to shooting, and I actually wasn't expecting it to kick this much, but spongy was the right word to describe the impulse. It's not as egregiously crunchy as stock VFC buffers, but I can definitely feel the spring on the buffer at work. It is snappy, and while the recoil isn't amazing, compared to how little reciprocating mass it has, this is a good showing. In terms of raw performance, it manages a little over 100 rounds in continuous slow fire before it stops locking back. Interestingly, giving it time to warm up between strings of 35 doesn't increase that number. It gets 3 full mags and then a few BBs more, but cooldown starts to become noticeable in the second mag and is very apparent in the third. Full auto belts out 2 mags fine, but then starts to noticeably slow down on the third, so again, 3 mags and a bit left over. And with the magazine chilled to freezing, it gets about 100 shots or 3 mags. Oddly consistent, right? Well, if you run the numbers, this gun gets about 7 shots per gram of propane, which is about 2/3 that of VFC or GHK. This explains why the gun kicks reasonably well for so little mass, and why it doesn't care how cold it's getting. It just throws 50% more gas at each shot than its competitors, ensuring a complete cycle even at low pressure. The downside to this is that coupled with the slightly lower gas capacity of the magazines, it only gets about half as many shots per fill as those other brands, and cooldown has more effect on muzzle energy. So it's very important to get that complete fill, and we strongly recommend regassing after each mag's worth of BBs if possible. On the chrono, consistency is fairly good, and while it did about 1.7 joules at room temperature at 0.32 gram BBs, the power can now be adjusted arbitrarily with our bit of DIY. We do see that cooldown manifest, with the power dropping noticeably over the course of a mag, but this isn't bad enough to be a problem for gameplay so long as we refill after each mag. Now at range, as mentioned before, I swapped out the bucking and nub as I could not get the stock set up to cooperate with .3s and up. With just a quad bucking and nub though, we see much better performance. It puts rounds where aimed and can hop heavy BBs without complaints. Which brings us to upgrades, and honestly I don't think we can do justice to this. Swapping the hop and nozzle is one thing, but there is a huge variety of aftermarket parts available to the MWS platform, and we haven't had the time or experience yet to run through the options and really get a handle for what's out there. I will say the bad lever has already been yeeted because I observed it made lockback significantly less reliable. But otherwise, all I really had to do was swap the bucking and nozzle and figure out how to fill the mags properly, and now the gun just runs. Overall, it's not the best in terms of efficiency, but the performance holds up in all weather conditions. And while it isn't amazing in recoil, general shooting experience, or overall build quality, it isn't bad in any of these respects either. Internally, we don't see any wear that concerns us, and it took only minimal tweaking to get the performance up to a very high standard. Really, my biggest concern with the gun is just that the mags are a little finicky to fill, and clearly there are some mag compatibility issues, but these are solvable and without much trouble. As for pricing, from US retailers this runs about $380 USD, so compared to the big three of TM, VFC, or GHK, it's significantly cheaper. And I can tell you right now, even if you do end up swapping the nozzle and buying an adjustable valve and new bucking for another $60 or so, it'll still be significantly cheaper than addressing deficiencies of the other platforms. Before wrapping up, I want to give another shout out to Dynatec Industries for providing this rifle and accessories for review. It's great to see a retailer in the US that specifically caters to gas blowback airsoft. They also carry BLS BBs, which we know a lot of you guys have been looking for a US supplier for. They like what we do, we like what they do, check them out. So overall, do we still recommend this as a good gas blowback AR for beginners? Yep. Take that, Betteridge. It's not for me, but for someone who wants a simple, reliable gas blowback rifle in a modern style and isn't too fussed with real steel compatibility or building weird stuff, then an MWS clone is pretty much perfect. What makes this particular MWS clone appealing is that it stays close enough to the original design to be largely parts compatible and avoid introducing new issues, and it's easy enough to work on that the couple of recommended part swaps aren't hard to perform. As my friend Foolish demonstrated, there are some pitfalls to avoid, but if those aren't deal breakers, and frankly they really shouldn't be, then the Double Eagle N4 needs only minimal alteration to perform to a high standard, and I think he's going to be pretty happy when I hand this back to him. That's all for today, though we do plan to follow up on this in a few months and see how things shape up. And as always, thank you for watching.